Well, welcome everyone. Glad to have you today. I have a real honor to welcome Moira Lo Bianco. Did I say that
Hello,
right, Moira?
everyone. Yes, you said it perfectly.
Well, Moira is an amazing lady, a sound healer, a therapist, a classically trained composer, musician who's plays on the big stage in New York City and brings all these elements together into her healing work. It's just an incredible thing that she's done. I've had the pleasure of experiencing her work firsthand, and it literally knocked me out. She had to wake me up and tell me it's over now because I went like cold in like 20 minutes. It was amazing. So just wanted to learn more about sound and how that kind of plays together with SolaraGem and the light therapy. So Moira, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And tell us a little more about your background and how you kind of got from music to healing. What's kind of the journey you took from all this to into.
Yeah, yeah. So, as you mentioned, I've been working with sound and music for a very long time. I started playing the piano at the age of 5, and so received classical training, got my several degrees in music, and just enjoyed a beautiful music career. But together with that, I always practiced meditation, contemplation, even devotional prayer since very early age. And then, about 10 years ago, I started practicing yoga as well. And so slowly I just came to the conclusion that I wanted to integrate who I am with what I do. And that's where sound therapy started blooming in my life, you know, in my heart, in my life. And since then, I must say it has a wonderful journey and continuous discovery.
That's terrific. And I know one thing that's unique about your work, or at least very rare, is that you incorporate your musical skills into the healing work. And a lot of sound therapists are not musicians, probably most of them, but you specifically kind of bring those together, don't you?
Well, yes, in the sense that, yes, it is true that I bring in my musical background. But on the other hand, I just wonder, if you're working with sound, I feel like you really should understand sound, right? And I don't want to sound unfriendly, but it's kind of natural to me that if you work with sound, your tool. So music in this regard is very helpful, especially when we apply some of the principles like consonance, dissonance, working with the energetics of consonance and dissonance, and also working with relaxing or energizing practices. This has to do obviously with the instruments that we work with the playing techniques that we apply, and the type of tones that we use. So yeah, music always played an important role in my life, also in the sound therapy context, because I bring in those skills, if you will. But more than that, I feel that thanks to my music career and background, I developed a very deep appreciation for sound. And I think that's what maybe you felt when I, performed the sound therapy session on you, is that by appreciating sound so much and being comfortable with it, then you're able to work with sound very deeply.
Yeah. So for maybe people that are new or haven't had a sound healing session, maybe bridge into people. What is it doing? Maybe we know music is can be very emotive and can really touch our emotionally, depths. But how would a sound healing session kind of work for people, or what's going on during such a session? Maybe give people
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So first of all, I would like to mention sound therapy applications is very broad. So
Mhm.
every sound practitioner does his own thing and uses their own instruments. I personally work with overtones, meaning that I work specifically with this quality, which is the quality of sound itself. So just to have an idea, whenever we listen, we hear a single note, we have the illusion that that note is a single note, right? Do, but actually it's a compound. It's a spectrum of sound, and this is called harmonic series. And when the series keep on going on, becomes a broad spectrum of overtones. Let's call it micro sound that are within the sound. So when I work energetically on the body, through the overtones, I can actually detect imbalances. So that's the reason why I use only metal instruments, because they are very rich in overtones. So sound therapy session, the way I perform it, aims to, one, activate the parasympathetic response, meaning help the client to relax and just get very deep into meditative states, relaxed states. But also the second goal that I have when I perform a sound therapy session is to work with energetic anatomy in conjunction with both the meridian system and the chakra systems. So for this reason, I use different type of instruments and combine them in a different way. Lastly, I also work the biofield, which is the energetic field around the body. And so, yes, I work these three layers of energy. But I also apply the Panchamaya Kosha system, which is considering the human body divided or composed of 5 layers, which is the physical body, the energetic body, the emotional body, the intellectual body, and the spiritual body. They are called the subtle bodies. It's very complex in a sense, and because of the different applications, is also very deep and beautiful. And obviously, according to what's the client's needs, then I adjust each time, because at the end of the day, it's important to serve what's best for the clients.
Absolutely. And of course, a big part is that you're responding to how the client's responding, and you're adjusting based on the energy, the feelings, the awareness, because you're very connected to the client when you work with them.
Yeah.
How do you see that playing in?
Well, that's very important in my opinion, because otherwise it's just me imposing my own agenda on clients, right? Which is will be very not effective, honestly. It's important to just listen. I am a servant of sound, and that's what I do. So all I do is listening, and just through listening, detecting what's imbalance, where is it, and work with that. But it's very important for me to mention that I am just a facilitator. So I am an instrument. What's very important to mention is that it's the client that actually it's the client's body, right, to facilitate that process of healing. I am just helping that process.
Yeah, and it's just, I never like this question because I think it's too broad and too simplistic, but people always ask, well, how does this work? Like, how does the light therapy work or whatever? So it's not a good question, but I think there is good intent behind it, is to try to understand it. And how would you say are the different tones relating to different organs or connecting different emotional, how do you kind of explain in general how sound healing is working? Or
Yeah. So in relation to frequencies associated to organs, there is a lot of research, and actually, there are many studies that try to define very specific frequencies for each organ. However, because the human body and humans are so special, these numbers vary because everyone is different. So I'd rather explain it more simply, saying that Frequencies help us detect imbalances. So when I applied a certain type of frequency in a specific part of the body, I listen if the quality of sound that is produced is something that I like or not. Let's put it this way. So if the energy is flowing well and there is no disruption of energy in that specific organ, part of the body, as well as the biofield, because that's where I start, then the sound is going to be rich, is going to be smooth. When something starts being out of balance, the quality of sound changes. Why sound therapy works? Because it truly gives you an opportunity to relax. And if you consider that most of conditions and disease, meaning being not at ease, are caused by stress, just by activating the parasympathetic response, it's half of the job, right? Because we help the body to auto-regulate and restore balance. Energetic anatomy is also very, very important, just because this has nothing to do, in my opinion, if you believe it or not. I mean, these are very ancient traditions, right? And I think it's sad if we are still discussing them, because they've been working for so long that eventually we should just mention, yes, it's actually happening, and it's beautiful. But because we work with energy and it's something that we cannot touch, it's something that we cannot see, control in a way, so maybe we are skeptical. But when you start understanding the meridian systems and the chakra system, how they relate to each other, and how that impacts the physical, energetic, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual bodies, then you start puzzling everything together, and you apply sound to make that person go back to a place of ease.
Excellent. With the concepts or the things like resonance and entrainment, does that also play a part? And
Absolutely, yeah,
those.
that's actually extremely important, because the instrument, reacts to the body and the body reacts to the instrument. So without going into technical terms, because I would like our audience to understand it, simply, maybe because I am a teacher, so I am used to, try to make things simple rather than difficult. Let's imagine that the body becomes an instrument, a soundboard. Okay, so like the piano, like the guitar. Now we're talking about the human body. So when we apply sound to it, the soundboard of the instrument, in this case our body, gets into a state of resonance with sound, and sound with the body. So they are very much connected. In terms of entrainment, we also work with brain waves. And so there is a whole study on brain waves frequencies and the type of instruments that help facilitating that process, basically inducing states of consciousness. So if we are awake, and in this moment Mike and I are having a great conversation, we are in the beta state. But when we want to facilitate a healing process, then we want to detach from this state, leave this state, and get into alpha, theta. Alpha theta border, it's particularly important for healing purposes, and so on. So there is something called binaural beats, which are explored both from an acoustic point of view and a digital point of view, but the principles are the same. So basically, when you apply one type of frequency and another type of frequency on the other ear that are very close to each other, so they just are slightly different in terms of frequencies, then the brain creates a third sound, which is what's missing between the two. Let's say here I'm having 5, here I'm having 15. So what's in between is going to be 10. So the brain creates that. And obviously that corresponds to brainwave and states of consciousness. And when we induce alpha, theta, and so on, we get clients to an opportunity. We give them an opportunity to get to that state of consciousness, and so to relax deeply. That's why some of them, like my friend Mike, fell asleep.
Yeah, and I did the binaural beats for years using the whole sync years ago, and it was very powerful, you know, very effective. So I have firsthand experience with
Yeah.
that.
I will probably start working with digital sounds also because I'm very much interested in spatial sounds. So how to really project sounds and impact this way the nervous system. However, so far I really want to focus on acoustic sounds because anytime, and this is my musician point of view, anytime, for instance, I record an album, you know, it's a different experience than if playing that music live. As I was mentioning before, the sound has a body itself, and that body interacts with everything, with the room, with the person, with the energy of the room and the energy of the person. So whenever we start using digital sounds, the sound gets translated, transformed into an electric signal. And obviously we lose those qualities that are specific of acoustic sounds.
Yeah, there's a big difference. I've for years have sung in choruses, symphonic choruses, and doing live music is just, you know, a whole other level than recorded music. They're both great, but there's a whole energetic, like you mentioned, level to doing things live. So I can see that. So how would you kind of recommend if people were wanted to explore sound healing? And I know, like you say, everybody's different in how they do it, but there's some guiding principles you might suggest people ask questions of a practitioner or look into certain kind of
Yeah.
routes.
So yeah, the first thing I will mention is start developing an appreciation of sound, for sound. So I can maybe suggest a couple of exercises that people can do at home without necessarily booking an expensive sound therapy session, and try that out and see how it feels. So the first exercise is called mindful listening. So I encourage people to take 5 minutes of their precious lives every day and just sit somewhere at home or workplace, in a parking lot, in the park, wherever they are. Just take 5 minutes and start listening to the sounds around you. So by listening to the sounds, we want to avoid judging them, meaning this is a beautiful sound, this is a terrible sound. We just want to develop what's called the observer's mind, right? So just observe sounds and try to notice the different qualities of sounds. They are distant, they are far away, they are closer. What's the sound source? So a bird is different, and then a car passing by. So this is an exercise that is very simple, but it's very precious because it gets us the opportunity, it gives us the opportunity to connect to sound and to the sounds around us in a way that is not judgmental. So that is one exercise that can be done at home or wherever you are. And the second is humming. So it's very easy to do, and it requires the use of the voice, which is the instrument that we all have. And by humming, I mean simply creating a hum sound with your mouth closed. I suggest placing the tongue on top of the palate or right behind the front teeth, so that you can have this beautiful um, uh, place for sound to resonate through, right? So just by humming, I'm going to demonstrate. I'm just going to hum for a couple of seconds. So as you can hear, it's very quiet, so you don't disturb anybody. But it's very, very important to understand why it's so effective. Because there is something called the vagus nerve, which actually starts from proximity of this side here and goes throughout the body. And the vagus nerve is very, very special because it plays an important role in the activation of the parasympathetic response. But not only that, there are also the pituitary gland and the pineal gland that are in proximities of our cranium area as well. So by just humming, we stimulate these three important part of the body, glands and the vagus nerve, that help us relax and auto-regulate. So just by humming, we can actually achieve important results. And once again, you just have to use your own voice. There is no singing qualities that you need to develop, absolutely. It's just your natural voice.
Yeah, and that's so powerful. And we met at the Bioregulatory Medical Institute, and that's all about regulation and the terrain approach. People may have heard that term more recently. And that just plays in. Like, how does that kind of work in with the sound? How do you explain like the bioregulation terrain approach to people and using
Yeah,
sound?
so as I was mentioning, one of the two goals that it's covered by my approach is the activation of the parasympathetic response. So through that, we facilitate homeostasis. And so even if we just apply sound in those terms without even touching any of the energetic anatomy topics that some people are interested in, other people they're not, and I respect that. But even if we want to work on sound and the nervous system, there are many techniques. One is the humming that I just gave you, that are very effective and easy to perform.
Yeah, and even before our lifetime, certainly before mine, and certainly before yours, but early 1900s in America, and I'm sure in Europe and other places, people sang songs on the city buses when they were going to work. Everybody knew the songs and they sang together, and it was it was a sign of health, was singing, both just for
Mm-hmm.
fun and singing in groups. And it was a cultural thing that we've lost with this technology and isolation. And so just the mental aspects of sound and singing and music and are tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that because it is true that we lost these practices. For some reason, I always encourage my students, even if they are playing the most advanced piano piece, to always sing along. Because when they try to improvise something, I teach classical musicians to improvise. So, the first improvisations obviously are an attempt to improvise, right? And I always tell them, just sing what you want to improvise, and then find it on the piano. So singing is very important and is accessible to all because you don't need an instrument, you don't have to purchase anything. It's your own instrument that you have and you can use it.
Yeah, and improvisation was a big part of classical music. I mean, the Bach and
Yeah,
people like that, those were
even
designed to
before
be
that, yeah.
improvised. Yeah. So it's a very powerful thing, and it's beautiful because it's creativity and it's again opening up other channels.
And also there is the element of be mindful, or observing things. and also no judge. There is this idea of making a mistake that it's like, we grew up terrified. And so one thing that I teach to my student is anytime a mistake shows up, considering as an opportunity to open a door that otherwise will be closed. And so, slowly we can detach ourselves from judgment. That it's very, it limits us so much and makes us angry or sad or just not open to the beauty of life and possibilities.
Yeah, and the judgment comes from the mind, the neocortex, the mind, the thinking part of us, which is not really experiencing reality firsthand. It's trying to simulate the feelings, the emotions, the energy. And we get caught in these patterns because it's a beautiful tool that teaches us to kind of think about what happened and make adjustments and put beautiful things together. But it actually is a very limiting thing, and that's why working at the level beneath the mind is where it's where life happens and it's where healing happens.
Yeah, through meditation, I learned the term the monkey mind. And this is something I really exercise daily to just remind myself that I am not my thoughts. I am not. This thought is happening and it's going to stay there for a number of seconds or a number of minutes or a number of days. But if we start considering those thoughts as not something that identifies us, it's something that is happening and we let it pass without judgment, then slowly we change our mindset because we just break the chain of judgment. So with judgment, it comes attachment and rejection. So once we can overcome that, or at least attempt to overcome that, our mindset changes.
Absolutely. And there's a whole scale. I did a recent interview with Carrie Lake, who talked about regulating with animals, especially horses, because they connect with us energetically, but they don't judge.
Correct.
And so music, or even we'll talk about how it relates to light and the crystals and SolaraGem too, these are all things that are not judging, but they're giving us a regulation or something to regulate with and to experience at different levels. And so how does that all play in together?
Yeah. So I want to mention about this that I had the privilege of teaching some, children this past year, and obviously, I had the opportunity to teach special needs children, and I brought them sound. Mike, they react to sound in such beautiful way. I mean, all teachers were astonished by how our special needs children reacted to sound, and they started open up and they were able to regulate. It is amazing, and it really has to do with energy. The problem I feel is that very often energy is associated with woo-woo things, which is part of the picturing and narrative of telling a story. But the truth is that energy is a. I had an interview recently with Steve Knox, which is a brilliant physicist. And the interview was called Energy from a Physics Standpoint. So if we start considering energy from a physics standpoint, and then we apply that to medicine, we don't have to necessarily go to ceremonies and things like that if we don't feel like, because energy is a fact. It's a scientific fact. And so, I feel comfortable talking about energy because that's my background. That's my reference. But I also respect people who are scared by it because of the narrative that has been built around energy. So I just want to tell you, just check out physics and science, and you will find a great connection with energy, because we experience it in everything, quantum physics,
Well, it's interesting.
without even going there, or biophysics. Maybe
Right.
many people, they're not familiar with these terms, but when we go into energy, right, from a physics point of view, we start truly understanding that when we say everything is energy, it's absolutely true.
It's very true. And we can even think about it. It's really fascinating. But if you were to speak in Italian, I don't know Italian. So it just kind of sounds like noise to me. So what's interesting is all of us have learned as children how to take frequency content and put it into patterns and read the patterns in it and somehow process those and associate those with objects and things. But it starts as energy. And then you speak a beautiful language, and I have no idea what you're talking about. To me, it's just pure energy, but it's how our mind can kind of take it and make it into things that makes it's useful, but it's also limiting, because I can't understand this, but it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same with light and color. Our body, we actually create objects in our mind from just patterns of light, sound, and frequency.
Exactly.
We give those objects kind of cause and effect, and we build a whole world. We simulate a whole world that really is not real. But we think the energy is not real. So it's kind of funny. The energy is what is real.
Yeah, once again, I feel it's because of the narrative and the storytelling behind it. And obviously, everyone is different. So I personally respect everyone's point of view. I'm just trying to encourage people to learn more about energy and energy practices, and understand why sound can play a great role in their in their lives, because works with energy, and brings great energy to our lives.
And we can see it. I mean, just the response that I had doing a session with you, the response that you see all the time with people, it's overwhelming that their body is getting healing and getting beautiful energy and coherence and all these things. And you just see it in somebody's eyes, and their whole persona shifts. So you don't have to understand the science to know this is positive, this is good.
Yeah, it's just going back to being aligned. And like everything in nature, when it's chaos, it's very creative, but perhaps creates suffering as well. When things go back to balance and they are realigned, then we feel at ease, and we have a sense of wellness, overall wellness. So that's why it works. And I also don't want to convince people, like I know it works. So I just invite people to start connecting with sound, start appreciate sound a little deeper, a little better, and just make sound part of their daily lives, even if it's just through music. Choose the type of music that is good for um, your body, your mind, and your emotional sphere as well. So maybe if you want to activate the parasympathetic response, you perhaps want to listen to some meditative sounds, some calming music. So even just through music, you can start just considering sound as a therapeutic tool. And then eventually, one day, you're going to have a sound therapy session, and you will love it.
Yeah, well, how would you see it tying in with things like the light therapy? That I know you've had a little chance to play with the SolaraGem. So
Well,
what are
we're
your
talking about frequencies, right?
yeah?
So once we get into the realm of frequencies, it's just the source that changes, but the core principles are the same. And what I can also say, I mean, for my little understanding of it, because I don't work with light, I had the opportunity to check out Mike's device, thanks to him. But for what I understood, we also have there the two principles of relaxing and energizing, exactly like sound. With sound, we work with consonance and dissonance. With energy, we work with, with light, we work with type of crystals, so the actual crystal and associated color. But the core principles, I feel, are the same. Please correct
Yeah.
me if I'm wrong.
No, I think, I mean, the whole of all of reality is just a spectrum, and we can see it through a very narrow, what we call the visual spectrum, and we have a very narrow audible spectrum that we can hear. We can feel things that we can't hear, but our animals can hear a wider range of frequencies, can maybe perceive, and then we perceive things. So we're being impacted by frequency all the time, whether we realize it or not. And even some of the
Correct.
harmful things like the 5Gs and things are actually giving us like a jackhammer, to our soul, to our cells, because they can pick up at these higher frequencies that we don't actually hear or perceive, but our cells are processing frequencies at that level. So yeah, it's just this huge spectrum, I think.
So what I find very exciting is the opportunity to pair together sound and light. And I want to mention that I look forward to do that together, Mike, because I'm pretty sure we can come up with some interesting treatments and protocols that they can be applied in clinical settings, which is my ultimate goal, right? To introduce sound, use sound in clinical settings. So it's very exciting, and I think also through the lens of biophysics, the light therapy is now, having more and more followers and people interested in it, which is exciting.
Absolutely. Are there any other things that we need to talk about or cover? I know that we could talk all day, and I certainly could listen to you all day because it's
Thank
just, I
you.
love hearing you. But what else have
Well,
we?
I don't know when the interview will be published. If it's going to be this week, I'm going to host an event in New York City on July 8th. And I'm going to have some sound experiences together with an incredible musician. His name is Stefan San Juan. And together we're going to provide some sound to small groups. I will be performing my one-on-one sessions within the group. So I will work on the energetic anatomy, and Stefan is going to play, so that together we can have both the activation of the parasympathetic response through sound and work the energetic anatomy. In addition, I would like to mention that I am teaching a certificate program for medical and holistic providers, and it's called Sound Therapy Applications in Clinical Settings. And that program is specifically addressing clinical settings. So the language that is used and the type of protocols and treatments that are mentioned are based on research and what has been researched so far in the realm of sound therapy, but also explores new possibilities. And I invite people to just read more about on my website, and also on the Bioregulatory Medicine Institute website. The course, the certificate program is actually certified by the Bioregulatory Medicine Institute.
Excellent. You want to give out your website? We'll also post it below the video, but go ahead and give them that.
It's just my first and last name, so moiralobianco.com.
Excellent. So, and you're always doing ongoing things. So if it's after July 8th, when people hear this, just check your website, right? You'll have.
Yes, we will have more coming up for sure. Yes.
Excellent. And we're going to be out in Arizona, I know, in the fall doing some things. And
yes,
yeah.
we will see each other again at the conference. For that specific event, I'm going to talk possibilities of how to merge sound with other practices like meditation and yoga practices. By yoga, I mean trauma-informed practices. So coming from, trauma-informed type of background, and so merge sound with other modalities that have been proved to be very effective in autoregulation and, overall wellness.
Excellent. So we'll post a link to the Bioregulatory Medical Institute as well, so you can check out that event. And yeah, we'll be doing as much as we can together, because it's just a treat to work with Moira, and she's a brilliant a brilliant therapist and musician, and your music too is also on your website, right? If people want to learn
Yes,
about.
and people can also listen on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. Yeah, it's out there.
Well, wonderful. Well, I really appreciate your time today, and look forward to all the good things you're doing, and just hearing more about your onward and upward as you keep bringing this out. Your program sounds wonderful, and that's kind of that's an online thing, right? That people can kind of do.
Both, they can sign up online, but they can also have the training in person.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
excellent. So I guess if there's no other thoughts, I'll wrap up the interview. But thank you again for your time, and
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, everyone who is listening to this interview.